Hi everyone, this is Daryl and welcome back to Book Odyssey. Today I'm going to be looking at some of the controversy that has surrounded the popular military sci-fi Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. So when I started researching for this video, I set out to look solely at the work of Ender's Game as a piece of science fiction, its themes and story, and analyse why some have found these to be controversial, much in the way I did with my His Dark Materials video. As I got deeper into my research, however, it became harder to separate the controversy that surrounds the author himself with the controversy of some of the book's content. I found the two merged because, obviously, having written Ender's Game, Card's own opinions are often accused of permeating through the story. Because of this, I will touch on some of the controversy that surrounds the author himself, but I want to make a point here that it's not my intention to slam Orson Scott Card, either for his personal beliefs, which are not mine but are his to have, or for how some have interpreted Ender's Game. What I want to do is give you an insight into some of the contentious topics surrounding this masterwork of science fiction. You know, for the lulz. So let's take a look at what Ender's Game is all about. Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game has become a science fiction modern classic since its publication in 1985. Its premise, that a child prodigy could be trained to become Earth's greatest military leader against a race of seemingly hostile aliens, raises questions about the ethics of war, its psychological effects on soldiers, and the potential influences of the military on a democratic government. Ender's Game is set in the not too distant future. Earth is ruled by a global government which controls population and suppresses religion. Ender is a third, meaning he is a third child. Third children are, as a general rule, illegal, but waivers can be granted for the conception of a third based on the interest of the state. Ender's parents were granted such a waiver because it was devised by the government that the children of this particular couple will be of high intelligence and may be useful in the ongoing war effort. Ender's two older siblings, Peter and Valentine, like Ender himself, are child geniuses. However, each was branded unfit for fleet command in opposite ways. Valentine was too passive and Peter too aggressive. Ender as a third, it turns out, possessed equal qualities of both, a temperament the military was searching for in a child so that they could train him to become the leader they needed to win the war. Ender's Game was recognised as Best Novel in 1985 at the Nebula Awards and the 1986 Hugo Awards in the genre of science fiction and fantasy. While Ender's Game has never been outrightly banned, it has been the subject of much controversy for a number of reasons, including its depiction of child abuse and exploitation, militarism, genocide and politics. And that's all without touching on Orson Scott Card's vocal position on gay marriage. According to BannedLibrary.com, in 2012 in the US's South Carolina, a school teacher was suspended for reading Ender's Game to their class after a complaint from a parent that the book was, quote, pornographic. And in 2014 in Colorado, a parent complained to the school board because of the violence, language and, quote, renouncing of religion in the book. The school, however, kept the book on the approved list. So let's take a look at some of the content and themes in the book which could be considered divisive. Ender is just 6 years old, and yet the book tackles very adult themes with this character at the centre and generally depicts many of the kids being involved in questionable behaviour. At the battle and command schools and the military training academy, the children are subjected to psychological manipulation and exploitation that, through the majority of the book, are argued as being necessary, but by the end are labelled what they are: abuse. As a direct result of these exploitative manipulations, Ender kills a fellow student in self-defense and eventually goes on to commit genocide of an entire race while thinking it's nothing more than a simulation. Mass genocide is a hard concept for children to even comprehend, much less be responsible for. The fact that children are forced into these very adult and violent roles naturally lends itself to being a controversial topic, as does the violence and abuse committed against the children and the violence that they themselves enact. Ender becomes a hero by causing catastrophic death to an entire species, and yet when the reality of what he's done is revealed, he can't cope. It seems having children as young as 6 depict this type of violence might have been too much for cinema goers, as the film's adaptation, which was released in 2013, cast older children in these roles. In an interview with Wired magazine, Card was asked about this and also why he was adamant that Ender shouldn't be played by a teenager. Card said, "If he's older, puberty has hit, so it would be tempting to try to give him a love interest, but that's not the version that is being used, for which I'm deeply grateful. Maybe the people at Lionsgate have understood that turning this into a teen romance would really kill the story." On not using a 6-year-old actor for the role of Ender, Card said, "Well, the stuff these kids are required to do, they're flying on wires, in order to keep the budget within line, they had to work with older kids. So, though there are things I wish had gone a different way in the abstract, given the realities of Hollywood, I couldn't be happier." Ironic that Hollywood won't have kids flying around on wires, yet in the book, they're wiping out species. Another aspect of the book that has come under criticism is in how some have interpreted the book's stance as pro-militarism and pro-war. Militarism is the belief that a country should maintain a strong military capability and be prepared to use it aggressively to defend or promote national interests. According to the Marine Corps Association, since the creation of the Commandant's professional reading list in 1988, Ender's Game has been required reading for all Marines. It says that, at the time, the book was considered a primary tool to illustrate many of the principles of maneuver warfare, a military strategy which attempts to defeat the enemy by incapacitating their decision-making through shock and disruption. In addition, the Marine Corps Association says the book presented, quote, "visionary ideas about war games and realistic force-on-force free play training." War is one of the major underlying themes of Ender's Game. Everything Ender goes through, the war games in battle and the war itself, and even his personal feuds with bullies, trains him to become the leader the international fleet has been looking for. What he's subjected to is done so in an attempt to teach him to believe that extreme acts of violence are necessary to win, and to make sure that a threat is permanently neutralised. "I have to win this now and for all time, or I'll fight it every day and it will get worse and worse." On Ender's psychopathic brother, Peter, he says, "Peter might be scum, but Peter has been right, always right. The power to cause pain is the only power that matters. The power to kill and destroy, because if you can't kill, then you're always subject to those who can, and nothing and no one will ever save you." In Ender's Game, Ender can make devastating blows against the enemy from a distance, detaching himself from the real effects that his actions have. This is something that can be seen more and more in today's military strategies with the increasing use of drones, which some argue disconnect the effects of violence from the people pushing the button. Some have even accused Card, through his writing of Ender's Game, of defending genocide. According to a critical article published by Salon.com, the novel repeatedly and carefully validates the concept that confronted with violence, you must respond with violence. When Ender is subjected to dangerous bullying, he responds with deadly force, which the article states as being presented as justified in the book. And that equation applies in international, or in this case, intergalactic relations as well as personal ones, the Salon article states. As his handler Colonel Graff tells Ender in the book, "If one of us has to be destroyed, let's make damn sure we're the ones alive at the end. Our genes won't let us decide any other way. Nature can't evolve a species that hasn't a will to survive, so if we can, we'll kill every last one of the buggers, and if they can, they'll kill every last one of us." Here, critics state that this presents genocide as not only a moral choice, but a biological necessity. The author of the article accuses the book of not condemning war through a vision of unnecessary genocide. Rather, it suggests that even in the case of unnecessary genocide, war is righteous and ennobling. Linked with the theme of war is the theme of politics, which becomes a large focus of the book as it goes on, but also permeates throughout. Ender himself does not involve himself in politics, but his sociopathic brother Peter, with the help of their sister Valentine, does. If you're interested, I go into the politics of Ender's Game in detail in another of my videos, which I'll leave a link to here. The premise of the politics in Ender's Game comes about when Peter creates personas of Locke and Demosthenes, two political thinkers who influence national policy through manipulating online conversation. Where have we heard that before? Peter goes on to leverage this infamy into a position as world leader in the global government after the war, ironically saving millions of lives by putting an end to the war between men that resumes the instant the war with the aliens is over. This story arc represents how news and politics plays out in the world and is one of the most intricate parts of the book. It also has an almost prescient insight into how online forums, i.e. social media, would come to be one of the most important tools for political lobbyists. In an interview, Card said, "People give me a lot of credit for having predicted the internet. If you look at the first copyright date, I wasn't really predicting. However, my one prediction was that as soon as the web became open to the public, networks would become politically important. It took a while before they were, but that one I got right." The politics in the book and the politics of the author can't be separated entirely, some critics say. So let's take a look at a few examples where some have accused Card's own politics of infiltrating the book. In the book, Ender's parents must be secretive about their religious views. His father is Catholic and his mother, like Card, is Mormon, because the free practice of religion is no longer allowed. According to critics, Card himself believes that religion is, quote, under fire in present-day United States. A few stereotypes make for slight uncomfortable reading, at least for most modern readers, with one character introducing himself in this fashion. "We doing okay, Ender Bender? I rose de nose. Jew boy extraordinaire, and you ain't nothing but a pin-headed pinprick of a guy. Don't you forget it." Now let's take a look at the aliens themselves, which throughout the book are referred to as buggers, a nickname that originates from the aliens' insectoid attributes. But the word bugger is also a derogatory slang term, albeit a mainly British term, for gay men and gay sex. At one point a character even throws the insult "bugger lovers." Some critics do concede, however, that as an American, Card may not even have been aware of this. Some also point to alleged homophobic bullying in the book, with one character being ridiculed for being a, quote, butt wiggler, and after Ender gets bullied by Bernard, he hacks into the school's texting system and sends everyone a message that states, "Cover your butt, Bernard is watching." He then sends one that appears to come from Bernard. "I love your butt, let me kiss it." It could be Card's personal and very open opposition to gay marriage, which has caused some to scrutinise his writing in this way, which, coming from another author, might have just been put down to simply kids being kids. Card's comments on politics and his beliefs outside of the Ender's Game story have been stirring up controversy since the 90s. In 1990, Card argued in the magazine Sunstone that, quote, "laws against homosexual behaviour should remain on the books, and be used when necessary to send a clear message that those who flagrantly violate society's regulation on sexual behaviour cannot be permitted to remain as acceptable, equal citizens within society." He later went on to join the board of the National Organisation for Marriage, which opposes same-sex unions. Wind forward a few years, and a piece written by Card is found which indulges in a, quote, thought experiment that compares former US President Obama to a dictator, calling him the dumbest president in American history. Card's political stance and open homophobia caused an unexpected publicity nightmare when an activist group called Geeks Out pushed for people to boycott the film adaptation of Ender's Game, claiming that anyone who pays to see it will be effectively subsidising, quote, anti-gay fear-mongering. Lionsgate issued a statement in response to the boycott movement, emphasising that Ender's Game has nothing to do with gay rights or really any contemporary debate. Lionsgate said that while it does not agree with the personal views of Orson Scott Card, his opinions are completely irrelevant to a discussion of Ender's Game. Responding to a threat of boycott, Card himself released an exclusive statement in Entertainment Weekly, which he declared the gay marriage issue moot, as a result of the then recent Supreme Court ruling. He said, "Now it will be interesting to see whether the victorious proponents of gay marriage will show tolerance towards those who disagreed with them when the issue was still in dispute." Even Hollywood actor Harrison Ford, who played Graf in the film, found himself embroiled in the controversy during a Comic-Con Q&A session. On Card's reported homophobia, Ford stated that while he fundamentally disagrees with the author's stance, the film stands separate from the issue. He said, "I think none of Mr. Card's concerns regarding the issues of gay marriage are part of the thematics of this film. He has written something that I think is of value to us all concerning moral responsibility. I think his views outside of those that we deal with in this film are not an issue for me to deal with, and something I really have no opinion on. I am aware of his statements admitting that the question of gay marriage is a battle that he has lost, and he admits that he lost it. I think we all know that we've all won, that humanity has won, and I think that's the end of the story. In an interview with Wired magazine, Card later went on to say himself that his views on gay marriage have nothing to do with Ender's Game. He said, "I hope that people will realise that they are not getting a true picture of me from these comments, and they're certainly not getting anything to do with Ender's Game, which was written long ago and has nothing whatsoever to do with gay marriage. I'll just trust the audience to decide for themselves what the movie actually is, not what other people are saying about me." Interestingly, Card appears to want to keep his personal politics separate from his writing. In an interview with Deseret News, he said that if you respect a writer, then you talk about the work. If you disdain the writer, then you try to psychoanalyze the writer and figure out why they would write what they write. He said, "That's all I get from science fiction literary elite, if they mention my work at all, which they rarely do. It's to dismiss it and to psychoanalyze me, which they are incapable of doing since they've never actually formed the kind of community bonds that my fiction always depends on. They have no idea what I'm talking about. They couldn't produce that fiction if they tried, because they don't share those values, but readers do." So to me, this all seems to come down to one question. Can a writer be capable of separating their politics from their art? On the one hand, yes. Being a writer myself, I often include incidents and characters that I loathe, and I would hate for anyone to judge me by these detestable characters. But on the other hand, no. There are themes and messages that run throughout a novel that inherently come out, even without the author realising it. Another question for you. As readers, are we capable of separating an author's politics from their art? It's a stumper. As a former friend of Card's wrote in an article for Wired when writing about this very thing, if this were fiction, there would be a clear answer. Real life is messier, the stakes higher. Complex and painful problems aren't always offset by elegant solutions. Sometimes there's no right answer. Sometimes every choice means letting go of something valuable. The question isn't whether, but what. So that's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys found this little insight into the controversy surrounding Ender's Game interesting, and I'd love to get your own thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to hit the like button and to subscribe if you haven't already for similar videos from me. Until next time guys, happy reading.